This video is sponsored by DevMountain. If you're interested in learning web development, iOS, or UX design, DevMountain is a 12-week design and development bootcamp intended to get you a full-time position in the industry. To learn more, visit devmountain.com or click the link in the description below. Hey, what's going on, guys? So it's the weekend. I wanted to do something kind of light, so I was looking around different sites to get some ideas, and Scotch.io, which is a site that I go to pretty often for written tutorials. They have some good video ones as well. But they also do these code challenges. And this one is an infinite scroll Unsplash gallery challenge, where basically you need to create an image gallery using the Unsplash API, which is an image sharing service or image providing service. They give you these really high quality free stock images, and they have an in-depth API. So we need to connect to it, and as we scroll down, once we hit a certain point, we need to make another request to the server to bring in some more images. So it's basically a never-ending scroll. It's a way to add basically pagination to your site or to your application. And it doesn't have to be Unsplash photos. This could be absolutely anything. However, we're going to change the goals a little bit. So basically, the way that they're asking to do it is to make the request directly from React or from your front end. We're going to actually create a server, a node server, using the Unsplash JS library, which will allow us to put in our access key because we have to register an app and so on, and you don't really want to put that stuff in the front end. So we'll do that, and then we can actually fetch photos like this. So we'll be able to do unsplash.photos list photos, and then we'll serve the JSON, and then in our React app we'll connect to our back end, we'll get those photos, and we'll add the infinite scroll effect. Okay, so it's going to be a little more in depth. And they give you some hints here. So if you're using React, use the React infinite scroll component, which I haven't used before this, but it looks pretty cool, pretty easy to use. And let's see, we have to create a new Unsplash app to obtain an API key. And then the solution, as far as Scotch.io goes, will be posted on Wednesday, February 20th. Okay, if you want to come back and check it out. Now, if you want to kind of pause the video and try it yourself, go ahead and do that. And then you can kind of see what I did after. But we're going to go ahead and get started. And first thing I'm going to do is just create or register an app with Unsplash. So this is unsplash.com/developers. And you have to create an account. I'm already logged in, as you can see. And I'm going to go, I'm going to go to your apps and then new application. Okay, so we'll just check all the boxes here and accept. And then let's call this infinite scroll challenge, and we'll just say, I don't know, React image gallery. So now if we go down here, you'll see we have two things. We have an access key and a secret key. And like I said, when you have these API keys, you don't want to put them on your client side so that people can just view the source and see your API keys. So we're going to have a node server, like I said. We're going to use Unsplash JS on the back end as well. So I think that the first step we should take is that, creating our server. So let's jump in. I just have a folder called Unsplash Infinite Scroll. And let's go ahead and generate a package.json with npm init-y. And you will have to have a little bit of experience with Node.js. If you don't, I do have a Node.js crash course that I created about 2 weeks ago if you want to check that out. And then I also do have an Express crash course because we will be using Express to create our endpoint. All right, so let's install the dependency. So npm install, let's install Express. Unsplash-js. Now, Unsplash.js has a few dependencies that we need to install, such as Babel register. And then it also needs node fetch. That's what it uses to basically make the request to the Unsplash API. And I'm also going to install universal config, -config, just so we can have universal configuration variables. And then I also want to install concurrently and this will allow us to run both the Node server and the React front-end dev server at the same time with one command. All right, so we're going to learn quite a bit in this little tutorial. So let's install that stuff. It should get added to our package.json. And then just one more thing I want to, I need to update npm. Let me do that real quick. So one more thing I want to install as a dev dependency is nodemon, which will just, whoops, I need to do sudo, which will just constantly watch our server. All right. So npm is now updated. Now let's do npm install -d nodemon. And that should be good for as far as the Node.js goes. All right, so now what we'll do is create a folder called server.js. All right, and let's also create a folder called config. And then in config, I'm going to create a file called server.js. So this is our config file. Now, this is where we want to put like our application ID or secret or and secret, that stuff, also the callback. So we're going to just module.exports so that this is accessible elsewhere. And let's do application underscore ID. Okay, and I'm going to set this to process.env.applicationID, which will look for what is that? process.env.applicationID. So it'll first look to see if there's a global variable with it, or we're going to just paste in the ID, which I'm going to get right here. It's actually the access key. All right, so we want to paste that in. Next thing we want is the secret. If I can spell it right. Okay, so for the secret, let's do process.env.secret or, and then we want to paste in our secret. We're on the back end, so it's okay. If you're to deploy this, you do want to set up global variables on your server. But let's go ahead and just grab secret key. And we'll paste that in. Next thing we want is the callback URL. So we'll set that to process.env.callback URL or, and we're just going to put our local address in here. So it's going to be the front end, so localhost port 3000. We're going to run the server on 5000, the Node server, and then React will run on 3000. All right, so we'll save that. And let's go into our server.js. And in order for Unsplash JS to work, we need to set global.fetch to node fetch. So let's say node-fetch. Okay, so let's bring in universal config. Require. Let's see, universal -config. It just allows us to include our config parameters in a more elegant way. And then let's bring in Unsplash. We want to do uppercase U Unsplash because we actually need to instantiate an object from this. And let's set this to require. And we want to require Unsplash. And then we just want to do .default because there's multiple exports. So we want the default. And then at the same time, we also want something called toJSON, which handles actually, giving us the JSON from the request. So let's say toJSON. And then the last thing we want to bring in is express. Okay, so we want to require express. All right, now let's go ahead and instantiate Unsplash. So we're going to say we want a new Unsplash object, and this takes in all of our parameters, all of our configs. So first is application ID, and we're going to set it, since we're using universal config, we can say config.get and then whatever value we want, such as application ID. Okay, next thing we want is the secret. So config.get, and we're going to get secret, and then callback URL, config.get, and we want callback underscore URL. All right. So now that we have this Unsplash object, we can use it to make requests to the API. So we want to bring in Express so that we can create an endpoint. Okay, so let's do app.get. So we'll make a GET request to, let's do /API/photos. Okay, so in our React app, this is the endpoint that we want to hit. Let's put our request and response. And then what I want to do is take Unsplash, and it has a method or a property called photos, which has a method called list photos. Okay, so we want to hit that, and that takes in basically a starting point. We want to start at 1, and let's get 30 photos. All right, now the way that node fetch works is just like the regular fetch API. We're going to do .then and basically turn it to JSON. That's where this comes in. And then we do another .then. Okay, and then we get our JSON, or we get our data, and then let's just do a response.json and pass in that data. Okay, and that should give us the images. Now down here, we just want to listen, app.listen. I'm just going to create a variable to hold our port, and we want to set that to process.env.port in case there's a global variable, or port 5000 on our local machine. Okay, so in here, let's pass in port, and let's just do an arrow, and let's do a console log with some backticks, and we'll say server started on port, port, and that's it. Let's save that, and now we should be able to query this API and get this stuff. Now we need to create a couple npm scripts, so let's go into our package.json file, and we're going to have, first of all, just a standard start script that's going to run node server, and then let's do server, which is going to run node mon. So node mon server. Let's do client. So this will run React, which we haven't set up yet. And remember, the React dev server is npm start. So we want to do npm start. However, we want a prefix with client, which will go into the client folder and run npm start. And then for dev, we want both to run. So this is where concurrently comes in. So we say concurrently, and the way that we format this is going to be backslash double quote, and then the first command, which is npm run server, and then we want to end this with slash double quote, and then we want to do another slash double quote, and then npm run client, okay, slash double quote, and then end it off with a double quote. So this will run both of these at the same time with one command. So let's save this, and for now we're just dealing with the server, so I'm just going to do npm run server. All right, looks like we have an error. Cannot find module Unsplash. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry, it's Unsplash-JS here too. Okay, let's try that. Oh, it's running good. Okay, so I'm going to actually use Postman to, let's get rid of that, to test this out. So we want to make a GET request to HTTP localhost port 5000 /API/photos. And there we go. So what we get here is an array of 30 photos or 30 objects that have everything to do with the photos. They have an ID, they have the date, they have the width, the color, the description, all the different URLs for different sizes, basically, links, categories, a lot of different info, all the user info of the person that uploaded the image. So it's a really in-depth API. There's like authentication where you can add photos from your app and stuff like that. So it's really something to look into for creating more in-depth applications. But now at least we know we can get these photos. So now we can start to work on the front end. So let's go back and we can close those up. And now what I'm going to do is just stop that server, and I'm going to create a React app. So I'm just going to use npx here so that I can just take create React app and just use it without installing it globally. And I'm going to put React inside of a folder called client. Okay, so let's run that. And if we go back to the challenge page here at scotch.io and we hit code, they basically give you some starting HTML, because we're going to just kind of make it look like this. It's not going to look that great, but I'm just going to use this HTML and CSS. As far as the JavaScript, they just put a bunch of variables in here, like the API root, count, access key, and endpoint. And typically, you don't want to really, put your access key on the client side like this, at least in like a production app. But yeah, we're not going to have to do that because our access key is on the back end. But yeah, let's go back, and now we want to CD into client. Okay, we want to be in our React app, and I just want to install a couple things. We want Axios so that we can actually make a request to our back end. If you want to use the Fetch API, that's fine as well. We also want the React Infinite Scroll component, which I forget exactly what it's called. Let's see, where is it? Right here. So this right here, React Infinite Scroll components. So we'll just go ahead and grab that, paste that in, and let's install those. All right, and while that's going on, let's do a little cleanup. So inside client, let's go to source, and let's delete some of this stuff. So we don't need app.test.js, we don't need index CSS, logo SVG, or the service worker. So I'm going to get rid of all that stuff. And then in the index.js, I'm going to get rid of the import of the index CSS, get rid of the service worker import and the service worker unregister down here. Okay, and save that. And then in the app.js, let's just clear out this logo import, and then clear out everything within this div, so this whole header area here. And for now, let's just put an H1 and just say app. All right, so we'll go ahead and save that. And then in our public index.html folder, I'm going to clean this up a little bit. And let's change the title here to, I don't know, Unsplash Gallery. And if we look at the code pen that I was talking about, if we go to settings and we look at CSS, they're using Bulma and this Carter 1 font. So I'm just going to grab both of those as well. So let's copy that, and then let's just put a link in here that goes to Bulma, which is a CSS framework. And then let's also grab the font, the Carter 1 font. And we'll put that right here. Okay, we'll save it. All right, so now let's run our server. Now we can run both the front end and the back end with npm run dev because we use concurrently. Whoops, we need to cd ... back into the server and then npm run dev. So that will run Node on 5000 and React on 3000. Okay, so there we go. We see our app. Now, the next thing that I want to do is let's grab from the code pen the HTML. So this div with the ID of root, I'm just going to grab this whole thing right here, and let's go into our app.js and just put that right here in the return and just get rid of this comment right here, so this whole area. And then this div with the class of images, this is where we want to put our output, and I'm going to create a whole new component for our images, so we'll replace that in a little bit. But let's save that. And also in app CSS, I'm just going to get rid of everything, save that. Actually, I think there's a little bit of CSS here, so we'll just grab this. So we just basically have a container, class of images. So when we create our images component, we'll wrap it in a class of images and then give each one a class of single photo, just to kind of go along with this challenge. So in app CSS, we'll go ahead and paste that stuff in. All right, so now let's go back to our application, and it should look like this. All right, and I'm just going to open up my Chrome tools here. And oh, we forgot to do class name. So the HTML that I pasted in, I'm just going to grab all the classes here. So I'm just doing Control D, and I'm going to do class name. And then let's create our images components. So we want to go into our source, client source. I'm going to create a folder called components. And inside here, let's create a file called images.js. Okay, so this is going to be a class-based component. I have the ES7 React Redux extension installed, so I can just do RCE like that, and it'll give me a class. We need to bring in a couple things up here, so let's do import Axios because we want to make a request to our back end, and let's also bring in our infinite scroll. So we're going to say import infinite scroll from infinite or React infinite scroll component. All right, now in our state, we don't need to put like you know, the access key and stuff like that. That's already in the back end. One thing I wanted to do is create a proxy so that we don't have to make a request to, you know, localhost 5000. I just want to be able to do /API/photos. So I'm just going to save this for a second and then go to the React, so the client package.json, and create a proxy here. So let's say proxy, and let's set that to HTTP localhost port 5000 and save. Now once you create a proxy, you have to restart the server, so let's do that. Okay, we'll go back to images. Oops, what happened? There we go. All right, so we'll go back to images, and in our state, of course, we need an array to hold all the images that we get. Let's set a count of 30, and let's say start. We want to start at 1. Okay, because remember, in our back end, if we open up our server, it's going to take in basically a starting point and then the number of photos. Now, each scroll, when we get down to the bottom, we basically want to start at 31. Okay, we get down, we would then want to start at what, 61. All right, so because we don't want to get the same, we don't want to make the same exact request. So this is actually going to take in some query params, and we're going to replace these hard-coded values. And I guess we should do that now. So let's replace this one with request.query.start. So that will just grab from the URL the start parameter. So let me just show you. If we do, like, you know, /API/photos, and we do start equals 1, this right here is going to grab this value. Okay, so we want start. We also want the count, so I'm going to replace this with request.query.count. So let's save that, and then let's go back, and that should be all we need in our state, I believe. So let's see, in the component did mount is where we're going to make the initial request. So let's say component did mount, which is a lifecycle method. And I'm going to pull from the state. Let's pull the count and the start from this dot state. And then let's take Axios and let's make a GET request to /API/photos, and we want to put in a count parameter, and actually want to use backticks here, not quotes. That way we can put variables right in. So we want to put in our count from the state that we just pulled out, and then we also want the start, which I'll set to the start that we pulled from the state. All right, now this will give us a promise back, so we want to do a dot then. Let's do res, and then we just want to set the state. So this dot set state, and what we want to set is the images. Okay, so images now we want to fill with the response data that comes back. All right, so now as far as this return, let's just do let's just say hello. I just want to console log and make sure that we're actually putting that stuff in the state. So let's say this dot state. All right, we'll save that. Now we have to bring this images component into our app.js. So let's go up here and let's import images from. We want to go into components/images. And this div with the class name of images, I'm going to just completely replace this with images. Okay, so yeah, we'll go ahead and save that. Let's see, let's go back to our app, and now if we look down here, never mind this, we'll fix that. So you can see that we're getting our images. Okay, we're fetching these from the back end. So let's see, the next thing we want to do is output these on the screen, because right now it just says hello. So in our images component in the render, we're going to excuse me, let's create a class name of images, because remember we have that style in our app.css, and then inside here we want to put the images, but we want to wrap it in the infinite scroll. So this is where we use that. So we're going to say infinite scroll, and let's see, this is going to take in a bunch of props or a bunch of attributes. So first one is going to be data length. Okay, and we're going to set this to the length of the images in the state. So let's set this dot state dot images dot length. Okay, and then we want to say next. So basically when we reach the end, what do we want to do? We want to call another method that I'm going to call fetch images. We haven't created that yet, but we will. So we'll call fetch images. We're going to say has more, and I'm just going to set that to true. And then we also want to set a loader, which if you want to include like a spinner graphic or something, you could do that. I'm just going to put in an H4. Oops, H4, and we'll just say loading ... Okay, and then inside here is where we basically map through the images and output the image. Okay, so let's go ahead and put in our curly braces so we can use an expression, and we're going to say this dot state dot images dot map. Okay, so we basically want to loop through. We're going to say for each one we'll call it image, and then let's just return. We're going to have another component for the single image. So let's just do image, and we'll pass in a key. Oops, key needs to be unique, so we'll take the image.id. Now, the way that the random images work is they do repeat images sometimes, so we'll probably get the warning saying, you know, you already have a a list item with this key, because they will repeat, but that's fine. So that we also want to pass in, obviously, the image that we get back. All right, so let's save that and let's create the image component. So new file, image.js. All right, and this is going to be very, very simple, so we'll just do a functional component. And it's going to take in, as props, it's going to take in the image. So I'm just going to use destructuring here. We're just going to say, oops, we're going to pass in image. And then in the return, let's see, we're just going to return an image. And let's see, let's give it a, remember the class name of single photo, we're going to use that. We're just going by the standards of the challenge. So single photo, and then source is going to be image. Okay, we're passing in the image, which is going to be an object, and then it has URLs, and then thumb is what I want. That'll give us the actual URL. Okay, and then we'll just leave the alt blank. Okay, so that's it. We'll save that. Good. Just double check this. Okay, so now what we need to do is just create that fetch images, which is going to be pretty similar to this, except we just want to change the start value, or else it's just going to always be 1. So let's just copy everything we put in here, and let's say fetch images. Let's make this an arrow. Okay, and then I'm going to paste all that stuff in, except I just want to up the start. So I'm going to say this dot set state, and let's say for the start value we want to take this dot state dot start, and we want to plus the count. Okay, so basically, like I said, it's going to start at 1, but then when we make the next request, it'll be at 31, then it will be at whatever, 61, and so on. All right, oops, I forgot curly braces. So there we go. So it's just going to make the same request, except it's going to change the start so that we get different images back. All right, but we're going to still set the images to the data. So let's save that. Okay, we have to bring in the image component, which I didn't do. Okay, and that's embedded right here. Good. So let's try it. Let's go back to the browser. Cannot read property images of undefined. Let's check that out. Oh, what is this? Set state? All right, let's try that. Okay, good. So let's go ahead and try this out. So we have our initial request and response, which comes from the component did mount. Now, as soon as I get down, it should load again. So we get loading, and we're not getting anything. Let's see what's going on here. No errors. That's weird. All right, so let's see. This dot fetch images. Is this even running? Let's see if that's even running. Okay, so it is running. I must have messed something up here. So we're pulling the count. Oh, all I did was reset the images. We need to add them on. So instead of just setting images to res.data, let's do this dot state dot images, and then let's concat res.data. Okay, so we're not replacing, we're adding on. All right, that should work, hopefully. Let's try it out. So let's reload for good luck and go down, and there we go. So now we can just keep going. Okay, so it's just a never-ending scroll. And it goes so fast we don't even see the loading. Okay, but it's constantly making requests. In fact, if I open up my network, and you'll see we will get this key, 2 children with the same key, because they will repeat images. But let's go here, and if we go to XHR, you can see that. Oops, right here. Let's just restart so you can see how this works. Okay, so the initial request starts at 1, and then once we get past 30, it should make another request, and now it's at 31. Keep going. Now it's at 61. Now it's at 91. So you can see how this is working. Okay, it keeps making requests once we reach the bottom. So that's it, guys. We've completed the challenge, and we've done a little extra work by actually creating a node backend. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully it made sense. This infinite scroll component is really cool, and you can again use this in your projects in however way you want. Just you pass in the method. Just show you real quick. So you just pass in for next whatever the method you want to keep fetching. So if you, instead of pagination, if you want, you can use this, which is pretty simple. But that's it, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, please leave a like, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey guys, I want to thank you for watching my content. I genuinely appreciate it. And if you'd like to step up your support for this channel and get a few perks like free Udemy courses, consider becoming a patron. Even for $1 per month, it shows your support and pushes me to keep making free content and coming up with projects and ideas for you guys. So visit patreon.com/traversymedia or click the link in the description below.